My name is Schmidt. We're here with Krista Lauer. It's July 21st, 2025. We're at Bryn Mawr Vineyards in Salem. Krista, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely.
First question is, why wine?
For me, wine has always been very intertwined with family. Not only are we here at my family's business, but just growing up as well. So grew up in San Diego. I did not grow up here in Oregon. So we were not growing up in the vineyard or in the winery, but wine was very much part of our family dynamic growing up. So my parents took us wine tasting from a very early age, kind of dragged us around. We weren't always enthusiastic about it, but back in the times where it wasn't necessarily cool to bring your kids wine tasting, they were bringing us everywhere. So we definitely got exposed to it at a young age. They also hosted monthly wine dinners at our house in San Diego. There'd be different themes, different wines. And though we didn't really try wines much as a kid, I wouldn't say I definitely was exposed to actually drinking wine until later in life. It definitely was just part of our family dynamic. Anytime we had family gatherings, dinners, holidays, anything like that, wine was very much a focus. My parents had an amazing wine cellar, be a great place for hide and go seek because it was kind of hidden in the house. But I also just like the smells of that too. It was very like visceral and a lot of texture and physicality that I have those really wonderful memories from. And we also had a very unique situation in that my dad decided to have a backyard vineyard, which you don't see very much in Southern California, especially in San Diego. So yeah, wine was kind of going on everywhere. At the same time, I didn't necessarily think wine was my path. And so I just thought of it as kind of a fun hobby. I enjoyed learning about it and looked forward to drinking it and learning more, but didn't necessarily see it as my path forward. At the same time, when they took over Bryn Mawr, still actually didn't really necessarily see it as my path forward, just thought of it as a really cool endeavor that my parents were taking on and kind of wanted to get my toes wet a little bit, but I also knew I was really interested in the arts and really wanted to follow that and see where I could go. And so I thought it would always kind of be a passion and just kind of a fun hobby and a fun family endeavor. At the same time, I think wine chose my family, and a few years ago, I chose the family, which happened to also be choosing wine. So it really led into itself and is now, very much intertwined in my life.
So let's talk about growing up. Obviously, you mentioned wine always a part of your life, and then this place becomes part of it as well. So tell me about growing up in San Diego and kind of your memories of Bryn Mawr entering into the family's dynamic.
Yeah, so growing up, like I said, wine was always at every occasion. That being said, very different wines than I am now mostly exposed to. So my parents loved California Chardonnays, they loved big Zinfandels, they loved a lot of big reds. So, Pinot Noir here and there, absolutely, but I would not say the focus was Pinot Noir and aromatic whites, which I think is wines that I have specifically gravitated towards and they've gravitated towards. And obviously Oregon is a wonderful place for Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, and some beautiful aromatic whites, but also some fun big reds. So I think, when my parents were looking ahead of their next stages in life, we were all getting ready to go to college. I actually did not look at Oregon. I wanted to go as far away as possible from the family. So was not thinking about wine, was not thinking about family. So I went to school in Maine for a year at Bates College, which is a small liberal arts university in Lewiston, Maine, and very quickly regretted it and realized it was kind of nuts that I decided to go all the way there. I wanted something that was totally unique and different, and I absolutely got it. At the same time, I think I realized when I was there how much family actually meant to me, how important it was for me to be close to my parents and my family. And also how different the East Coast really is. The amount of people that I met that said, well, why did you leave San Diego? Why are you here? And I said, to have a new experience, to try something different. And they said, well, why would you ever leave? And I said, again, to try something new. You guys all live in New England. Why aren't you in San Diego? Why didn't you go to the West Coast for school? So it was an interesting dynamic and one that didn't really fall into line with kind of how I wanted to live. And so I made the decision actually to transfer. And I transferred to Willamette University. And so Willamette grad, go Bearcats. And that also, really wasn't part of the plan. And I do credit my parents again for that. I kind of followed them. So when all of us kids, me and my brothers, we were looking to go to school, my dad had been a stay-at-home dad for about 10 years at that point, which was absolutely amazing. I think it's why we have such a wonderful, close relationship. And he was the one that told me to come look up here. He had always loved Oregon, which is funny because we never once came here as a family before buying the winery. So I had no idea of what this was, and now I look out and it's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been in my entire life. But we had no context. All I knew was I hated the rain, and I didn't know anything about the Northwest. And so growing up in the city in San Diego, when they said they were looking at buying a winery, all of us thought they were crazy. None of us wanted to be involved. And again, I wanted to kind of get as far away as possible. But they lured me back. And I credit not only them, but also this beautiful place that we are in doing that. Obviously, Bryn Mawr was very different at that time when they took it over. Very small. We were working out of an old farmhouse, making all the wine in our basement, which was also kind of a culture shock, again, coming from San Diego. And so it was just a totally new life and environment. Also, transferring from Bates College to Willamette was a huge shift and a very different dynamic, even though they're both small liberal arts schools, very different approaches. I will say, though, I made the absolute best decision I've ever made by transferring. It was such an amazing decision. I had the best time at Willamette. I had an amazing education. I also got to play soccer there, which was really wonderful as well. So that was always a big part of the life and our upbringing. So sports was very much ingrained. So it was also great because my parents got to come and see me at games all the time. The one regret I have is I never got to be part of Harvest because soccer is a fall sport and it's essentially a full-time job. So I wasn't really here during that time of year, which I would have kind of loved to have that opportunity. At the same time, it exposed me to this kind of very slowly. So I got my toes wet. I, worked here in the summers, worked in the tasting room a little bit, saw a little bit of behind the scenes. But again, art was really what I was looking at studying. It's what I was passionate in. And so at Willamette, I studied art history and German, and then I ended up leaving. And I went to Colorado for 8 years and got my master's degree in art history and started working at an art museum and kind of thought that was the path forward. And again, never really saw myself being involved at Bryn Mawr on a day-to-day basis. But that changed. So.
What year did you graduate Willamette?
I graduated Willamette in 2015. And so moved to Denver then. And I was there until 2023.
So you mentioned obviously art being the driving force. Tell me about coming out of Willamette. What specifically did you think you would do, and what led you to Denver?
Yeah, so I knew I was always really interested in art curation and curatorial work. So finding artists, selecting artwork, and then interpreting it in a way that made it really accessible for visitors. I know that art can be intimidating to some people. I think wine is actually similar. And so I do think there is a lot of crossover. They're both very creative industries, but also it's a very subjective experience. And I also studied contemporary art and specifically abstract art. So those are even kind of more subjective and sometimes hard to interpret. And so I really wanted to be the person that was able to find those artists, find those artworks, create an experience for somebody, and then also kind of guide someone through that experience. And so the program I chose at DU, University of Denver, it was their master's in art history, but with also a museum studies concentration. So I knew that I didn't want to strictly do museum studies because that's a little bit more administrative focused. I knew I really still wanted the art history background. And so that was an amazing experience because we also got to work with a lot of institutions in Denver, meet a lot of different people who not only came out of the program, but who were working professionals in the art scene in Denver. Ended up getting an internship at the Denver Art Museum, and then through that got a job at the Museum of Contemporary Art. But started off kind of very low level. I started off as a gallery attendant one summer and worked my way up to working behind the desk in visitor services, to then working up to actually managing the visitor services department and the gift shop, to then transitioning to membership and then transitioning into curatorial. working as an exhibitions assistant, and then by the time I ended, I was the curatorial associate. So did a lot in 6 years and saw a lot, which was a really amazing experience. I think being able to work in a lot of different capacities and departments, it gives you such more of an overview of not only what they're trying to accomplish, but how they're doing their work and how they're interacting with each other and with visitors and with artists. So I really appreciate being able to have that range of experience. And one of the amazing things about that museum specifically as well is it's non-collecting. And so it's quite a unique approach in that they do not have their own permanent collection, which is quite rare for a museum, very much more of a Kunsthalle style. And so it was constantly rotating artists. So every 3-4 months, the entire museum was new. So it was always keeping me engaged, keeping me interested, educating me on new artists. There was so much to learn and engage with, and I absolutely loved that style. One of the big qualms I have with museums is about 95% of most permanent collections are hidden to the public and are in storage. So you're only really seeing about 5% of what they actually have in their collection. The rest is just hiding. And so I really love this because you got to see everything. And then 3 months, 4 months later, it was completely new again. And they also specialized in working with emerging artists. So a lot of artists that were really new in their career, that were showcasing new ideas and perspectives, new techniques, innovation, creativity, and just ways that I had also never been exposed to. And so that was really wonderful to be able to see. And I kind of saw myself going towards that route as well, of working with emerging artists, making content in a way that's, again, very accessible and approachable to people. You know, a lot of people, especially as I mentioned with contemporary art, can feel like they don't belong there and they're not supposed to be in there. And I think one thing that museum did really well was bringing those people in and trying to make it a fun, playful, engaging way to be able to view art and understand it and then hopefully appreciate that. And I think that is one aspect that when transitioning here is something that I really wanted to do in terms of how to take that experience and bring it into the wine industry.
So you talked earlier about kind of the parallels, the overlaps between wine art. So tell me since art was the way you were educated in master's degree and working, tell me about I guess bringing some sort of objectivity to a subjective nature like that. What did you learn? What did you experience about figuring out not only what you wanted to showcase, but how to showcase it and how to relate it to people?
Absolutely. I think breaking it down and not expecting everyone to be a professional is the number one most important lesson that I learned very quickly. And I think that's also something really different than how you're taught necessarily in a master's program. You know, you're in higher education, they expect that you know a lot, and they expect that you're able to talk about a lot of different things. And they expect you to, most of the time, use language that is theoretically a little bit more flowery, if you will. I will say art historians, they are masters at creating flowery bullshit. And like in a fun way sometimes, at the same time, someone walking down the street who doesn't have that background, they might not understand what you're trying to get across. And that is something that I very much wanted to change and to prioritize, is using language that anybody in the world would be able to understand. And starting from the basics as well of what are you looking at? What do you see in the most basic, banal terms? What colors are you looking at? Are there any forms? Is this abstract? Is this figurative? And starting from that kind of initial level and then being able to expand beyond that, I think is really important as well. I also think it is really important to understand where an artist is coming from. And at the same time, I don't want to lead with that. So I don't necessarily want to tell you, this is what this artist was thinking, this is what this artwork is about, and this is what you are supposed to get from this. It's very much, I want you to have your own experience first. Look at this painting. How do you experience this? What does it make you feel? And then give a little information of, that's amazing. That is exactly what you are supposed to feel. This is what the artist was thinking, and this is how they approached this, and this was their experience. Does that make you now change how you approach this art? Does it make you see something differently? Does it make you appreciate something in a new way? And I think that's my favorite part about art as well, is it's supposed to be personal. You can still have an appreciation for something. You can hate something, but you can also appreciate it in the same way. And I think that's really interesting in how wine and art can connect as well. I can try a wine that I don't necessarily enjoy, but I will appreciate it if I know what the winemaker was doing, what their approach was, why they did it the way that they did. And it's okay if I don't like it, because if they like it, amazing. That was the whole point. So I really love that dynamic of creating that beautiful personal experience and providing information and guiding somebody through that experience, but also maintaining that personality behind whatever they're looking at and whatever they're experiencing.
So interesting. I love that. Tell me a little bit about, as you mentioned that you had a lot of roles in a fairly short amount of time.
Yeah.
Tell me, as you were kind of working your way into the curatorial exhibition side, what were some sort of moments along the way where there was a role you played, or a decision you made, or an artist you worked with that was particularly memorable?
When I was in visitor services still, that's when I was still in school, and I was the only one at that point in school getting my master's degree and kind of working towards being in kind of a higher level museum job. And so I had a lot of expectations for myself. I think other people had expectations for me as well. And we started doing public tours. And they asked if any of us wanted to do that, and I said absolutely. At the same time, I had never done a public tour before. And the first tour that they had me do was actually for a private dinner event. The director was there, and the curator of the exhibition was there, and her husband was there, and like all the top level museum donors were there. And they specifically said they didn't tell me because they didn't want to make me nervous beforehand, which is good because I would have absolutely freaked out. At the same time, it was kind of great to just be thrown in there and give this tour. And after the tour, both the director and the curator both came up to me and said, "That was such a wonderful experience. Thank you so much. You did a fantastic job." Her husband came over later and said, "Thank you so much." And so I think even though it was kind of a nerve-wracking moment, and it was a moment where I had to say, like, yes, I want to do this, it gave me so much more confidence to say, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I can still continue to learn from all of you. At the same time, like, this is an area where I can shine, and this is an area where I can continue to learn and continue to grow. And at that point, I also made it very clear my interests as well in kind of working towards a curatorial path. It was a pretty small museum, so it was a pretty small team as well. And I will say they were very open when anyone had interest in kind of moving up or moving into different departments. They really wanted to be able to expose people if possible. So I absolutely credit to them in terms of them allowing me to have those different experiences. And then once kind of transitioning into the curatorial realm, being able to work directly with artists. I mean, that also was something I never really had experience with. And my gosh, did we work with a range of personalities. Some people, though, that I absolutely love dearly and I'm still in touch with to this day. Some I collect. Actually, the painting in our private tasting room that we're looking at right now is one of the artists I was able to work with in Denver, Diego Rodriguez-Warner, one of my favorite artists at this point of all time. And so it was so amazing to be able to make those personal connections as well. You're not just, and then kind of also like respecting me for what I was doing too. I think the art world can be really difficult and challenging in times of that. There's absolutely a hierarchy, and it can be a very challenging, difficult place to work. And people don't always respect everyone working at different levels. At the same time, the amount of respect I got there, not only from my colleagues and superiors, but from artists as well, and who acknowledged and who really wanted to also kind of work together and collaborate and engage. It was a really, really wonderful experience to have that. And also very challenging. So it was really unique in being able to work with such a range of personalities, also so frequently, as I mentioned, it's constantly rotating artists. So that's 3 different personalities you're working with simultaneously throughout the year. So it was, it was very eye-opening and very, very rewarding at the same time, while also being very challenging.
So you mentioned obviously that kind of unique approach of not being a collecting, but of a constantly turning. So tell me about that from your role in curation and exhibition. Do you ever get a chance to take a break and actually enjoy what you have up, or is it always kind of on to the next thing?
So that was actually one of the challenging aspects of it, absolutely. I didn't necessarily have a lot of time to just spend in the galleries. And those times where I did, where it was before we opened or late at night or something like that, and I just go sit in front of the paintings, those were the most magical times, because you just got to sit and appreciate what all had gone into this. So not only the artwork, but think about all this behind the scenes experience. Think about installation. That's always a crazy time as well. That's, 10 to 12 days of just pure chaos. At the same time, I have some of the most wonderful memories during that time. And you see everybody in a completely new light, and you see the museum in a new light during that time. And so I think there are so many wonderful, unique times that we were able to spend with the art. At the same time, that is one issue, is because, absolutely, you're on to the next. So you're kind of maintaining what's currently there, but then you're still helping to plan 3 other exhibitions that are going to open in 5 months. So there was really no downtime, I will say that. It was constant activation. So there absolutely are exhibitions I wish I could have spent more time with, and artworks I wish I could have spent more time with. But that was part of the nature of it.
How did it change your approach to art as a consumer of art? How do you approach it differently now than you did before?
Absolutely. I think before, and this also I think is an interesting tie-in with wine, it was very much, I will appreciate this because someone else is telling me to appreciate this. This is an artist who critics loved. This is an artist who's famous because of something at their time and another. And that is very much what art history is based on. Is based on what these artists accomplished during their time, who decided that they were doing amazing work, and we should all appreciate this for this reason. It's why it's a really interesting time in art history as well, because a lot of the narratives are becoming much more expansive. Historically, it's been mostly white men that have been appreciated. That has expanded significantly since, just even in the last few years. I hope it will continue. I think it will continue that way, to showcase much more diverse voices and perspectives. It gave me the opportunity to really form my own beliefs and opinions in a safe space. Because again, art is subjective, and even if someone tells you maybe why they appreciate this or why others appreciate it, doesn't mean you have to like it. And I think by working with emerging artists who don't necessarily have representation, who don't have a following, whose artworks aren't selling for hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, it's showing that you have the confidence in this person, you believe in them, and that's really all it takes. And so I think being able to support those people, that was a really wonderful endeavor to be part of. We also had a really unique program called the Octopus Initiative, which was a public art lending library that I managed. And that program commissioned 25 local artists to create 25 works of art each. And then it was available for the public lottery. And once a month, we chose between 10 and 15 artworks to lend out to the public. And you got to live with those artworks at home for 10 months. And so it was an amazing opportunity and entry for people as well, because that's the challenge for a lot of people as well, is collecting art. They think that's also out of their range or inaccessible. They think artists are too expensive, or they also think that they don't have the appreciation to have something in their house. When the reality is, you can have anything. Like, art should be everywhere. I personally believe that. I'm a maximalist in that way. My powder room has like 30 works of art in it. And it's my favorite room in my house, because it allows so much expression and creativity in one space. And I think, again, it's an opportunity for you to be able to find what you love and what you are passionate about. If it's kitsch, if it's modern, if it's representational, if it's Renaissance, if it's ancient, whatever it is, everybody actually does have a preference, and they have their likes and dislikes. And so I think promoting people to just live with that in a space where you can express yourself through art is really important. It shows a really unique side of yourself that maybe you didn't even know you had. And so I think this kind of approach of this public lottery where people don't have to pay, you can just live with something first. It was such an amazing program to be part of. It's something I wish more institutions were able to do. Obviously, there are massive financial challenges with it, and even when I left, they were struggling financially with it. It's not at the same iteration that it used to be, which is very disappointing for me because I was so close to it and had such a relationship with it and with those artists. At the same time, I think that, having those points of entry for people is really, really important. Again, both in art, but also in wine. So bringing people in and making something available is the way that you are going to get that support moving forward.
So while you're in Denver going through a master's program and starting your career, tell me about your relationship with Bryn Mawr.
Yeah.
How much attention were you paying? How much did you care?
Yeah, absolutely. So, every time I'd talk on the phone with my parents, which was very, very frequently, I would ask just how are things going, what's going on. They would keep me in the loop with expansion. Obviously, the majority of what has happened here happened in those years that I was gone. When I left, we didn't have any of this yet. We didn't have a tasting room. We didn't have a winery. We didn't have this 20-acre property. We were toying with the idea of building a tasting room down near the original house. We had expanded plantings in the original property, but I don't even think they knew exactly where they were going with it all. And so it was really fun every time that I would talk to them or come home to see that expansion slowly grow. And I was very intrigued by what was happening. At the same time, again, I wasn't here day to day. I didn't have the experience. So I tried to kind of not keep my opinions to myself, but keep suggestions to myself. Although very early on, I think it was when I was still working here in school, my dad made up a round of business cards for all of us. And he gave me the title of Director of Criticism. And I still have a couple of the old cards, just for show and fun. So, there's always been a kind of a playful understanding that I'm not short of sharing opinions. And I'd say that's our family in general. We're very open, outspoken people. We have strong personalities. And so even though I wasn't here physically, I still had that presence. At the same time, when I came here, I loved just seeing what was going on. So I came back at least once a year, mostly in the summer times on my vacation, and would sit in, do a tasting, would try all the new wines that we had, asked questions, really loved to see what was going on. But yeah, it wasn't part of my day to day. And I firmly believe that you need to understand what's going on before kind of acting on anything. And so I kind of made the decision long ago that unless I was really here and working here full time, I wouldn't necessarily have a strong role in the business. I always figured moving forward, because I saw myself in the arts for a very, very, very long time. I always thought I would come back here eventually, but I figured that would be much later in life. And so I always figured that no matter the dynamic, my brothers and myself, we would be involved in some way, but perhaps more on a kind of a higher strategic level, if big decisions needed to be made, things like that. But I never really saw myself involved in the more day-to-day operations. And then I decided to move back, and that all changed.
Yes, tell us about that decision.
Yeah, so at that point, this was kind of during COVID times. Things got really challenging at the museum. It got challenging for everybody. All organizations, I feel like, kind of had a reckoning. Museums definitely had that. It was very much about what are we doing not only for our visitors, for our artists, but also our staff. And a lot of museums, in my opinion, talked the talk but didn't walk the walk. And, at that point I had been there for 6 years. I had been very open about my intentions there and what I was hoping to accomplish, and had some very frank conversations and realized, where I really wanted to go wasn't going to happen. And at that point, I really didn't see myself starting anywhere else. I had thought about it, but at that point, again, I think during that time, realizing how much I missed the family, how much I missed being involved, my desire to actually be involved on a deeper level, my desire to be involved in something that had a little bit of a greater meaning, and my desire to be involved in something that I could actually be building a legacy with, and a very personal legacy for, I found myself gravitating much more towards that. And so had a very honest conversation with my boss one day in June, went home, called my parents, said I'm quitting, and I'm going to move back to Oregon, and I'm going to work at the winery. And they were shocked, because I love Denver. To this day, I love Denver. It's one of my favorite places. I never expected to love it as much as I do, but it was an amazing city. and I will always be grateful for my time there. But I knew it was time to come back here, to be closer to the family, and to be involved, because it was also a really, really exciting time here to be involved. We were growing a lot at the same time. I think we were looking to find areas of opportunity to continue to grow, but also to kind of find some stability and find who we really were, and also really come up with kind of our vision of the future, because for a long time it was expanding. And I think we kind of decided at one point, okay, I think we're kind of done expanding. At this point, we just kind of want to maintain, at the same time still find opportunities for new engagement. And so that was an aspect that I was really interested in participating in and being more involved in. So after I had that conversation with them, I came back here. We were hosting Drink Pink that weekend, because I also hadn't told my boss yet, or hadn't told anyone in Denver that I was quitting. And I came up here that next week for my summer vacation, and my dad had told the entire valley. So every single person that I met said, "Oh my gosh, I hear you're moving back. Amazing. When are you coming back? We're so excited." And everyone I said, you can't tell people yet. I haven't told anybody at work. So fortunately, it didn't get back to anyone. It was all good. I told them when I came back, but it was also really, I think, reassuring that a lot of other people were excited that I was going to come back too, because I think, I don't think anybody here, my parents included, thought I was going to come back to the winery anytime soon. Myself included. So it was a really exciting time. And when I came back, again, I was really adamant. I kind of needed to start from scratch and start at the bottom. I wanted to understand how everything was working, and always kind of knew I would find myself in more of the hospitality realm, because again, that just kind of worked a little bit with my background in the arts. I worked in visitor services, so very forward-facing, very customer-facing. At the same time, very interested in that subjectivity, how to talk about wine, how to talk about art, and kind of the overlap and dynamic between those two. And so started working in the tasting room. Learned so much from our amazing team who's been here. We've had people in the tasting room who have been here for years, so it's really amazing. They have seen the growth as well, so being able to talk with them, learn from them was a really wonderful opportunity. Rachel's been with us since the beginning as well, so being able to work alongside of her. And David was a amazing resource when I got here as well. I mean, he had the complete opposite experience I have had here, in that when he came back, he did literally everything. He worked harvest, he worked in the cellar, he worked in the tasting room. Now he's doing national sales, whereas I'm in the tasting room and I see myself in the tasting room. And I don't necessarily have all of that other experience. And so kind of really slowly trying to build my understanding of Bryn Mawr, where we started, where we were at when I got here, but then also where we want to go. But being very aware that I was the newbie. And yes, I'm an owner's daughter. At the same time, I didn't want to come in here and say, I know everything that needs to be done. And, I really wanted to absorb and learn. And then hopefully make suggestions and work towards, again, all of us kind of achieving a greater goal and achieving, a lot more engagement and activity that I think people really wanted. And I found that desire from a lot of people when I first got here as well, because we had a little bit of turnover in the tasting room. And so, I definitely wanted to create some stability, but you can't necessarily do that if you don't know what's going on yet. So those first few months were really eye-opening for me, and just learning kind of how everything worked, learning the dynamics, and then stepping into the role. 4 months after I got here, our director of hospitality left, so stepping into that role kind of immediately, which was very challenging and a bit overwhelming at the beginning. At the same time, very exciting, and really looked forward to that opportunity. At the same time, during that, all the while learning how to work with my family, which I had never done before. So that was, it was the start of something new and started something really exciting, but definitely a lot of challenges at the beginning, because you come from a place of having these personal experiences and relationships with your family. And I am very lucky in that we've always had really close relationships within our family. I've always been very close to both my parents. Brothers, we've always had our ups and downs, but I wouldn't be here if David and I weren't able to work together. But yeah, absolutely. There's, you had to figure out that dynamic and how to talk to each other, maintain professionalism, which we still work on every once in a while. That's inherent to the business. At the same time, it's such a unique and wonderful opportunity to be able to work with your family on a day-to-day basis and build something really beautiful. So I'm really, really excited to be part of that now.
So tell me about how you would describe sort of your relationship with wine before coming back to Bryn Mawr, before it was 2022 that you came?
Yeah.
So tell me about, at that point, what was your sort of relationship with wine, and what was it about this place that made you want to take the leap back?
Yeah, so again, wine was always it was a side interest. I like wine. I liked drinking wine. At the same time, I like drinking beer. I like drinking cocktails. So I was also like a little bit of everything. At the same time, by having a winery, obviously people are going to ask you lots of things about wine. And they're going to ask you for recommendations when you're at restaurants and things like that. And I'll be the first to admit, in those early years, and even my last couple years in Denver, every once in a while someone would ask me about something and I'd send David a picture, I'd send my dad a picture and say, what do you guys think? This is what I'm thinking, but what would you suggest? Because again, that was their day to day. Whereas for me, it was a low, it was a hobby. But I will say the wine industry in Denver and in Colorado is not booming. It's quite limited. So I wouldn't say I had a lot of exposure in my time there. At the same time, when I went to Willamette, I studied in Vienna for 6 months. So I studied abroad, and that was really eye-opening in terms of my absolute love and devotion for aromatic white wines, specifically Germanic white wines. So Riesling, all-time favorite varietal, Gewürztraminer, Gruner. So being able to really try those wines in the regions they were made. My parents were able to come out as well and visit me, and we were able to go a few places and taste wines. That, I think, was the first trip that I took that was kind of wine focused, where I thought, ooh, this is really something. This is really amazing. And I think it was because at that point I was interested in learning more, whereas a kid it was just like, ugh, can we go somewhere where we can actually drink something? Except the one place that had a non-alcoholic wine, which was fun. But for the most part, right, we're just sitting around watching them have all the fun. And this was the first time I was able to really participate. And so that was a really fun opportunity. I also spoke German, so I was able to converse with the people. We were in some really small towns. A lot of them were family owned as well, so that was really unique. And so that was, I think, kind of the first moment where it was very eye-opening of, okay, maybe this is something that could be more than just a hobby. At the same time, then, right, coming back and going to Denver, not as much. But anytime I came up here at that point, I was very adamant that I wanted to go wine tasting with the family anytime I was visiting. And that opened my eyes a lot as well in terms of specifically what Oregon is producing and the wonderful variety, because I think in my mind too, when we first got here, it was very much Oregon. Oregon was focused on Pinot and Chard in the valley, which makes sense. That is what our climate is here for. That is what those grapes are made for. But there was a lot of new things popping up as well, which really piqued my interest. And so, yeah, every time I would come back, I would be a little bit more curious. I would want to try something new. I would find something new that I liked or something new that I appreciated. And so that was also definitely part of luring me back. It's a really exciting time to be in the wine industry in the Willamette Valley. And a really exciting time to be at Bryn Mawr, because at that time too, we had planted new varietals. So, we have Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, but we had planted Riesling. We had planted Pinot Blanc. We had planted Dolcetto. We have Tempranillo. We were making some really new, interesting wines. And that is much more what I gravitate toward. I really love that variety. I love different expressions. I love a little bit for everyone and a little bit of everything. And so that very much is kind of what lured me back as well, is being able to be part of something that was looking to cater to a lot of different interests and a lot of different people.
So you mentioned that you felt a need to know from the kind of the base level what was going on here, what Bryn Mawr was about. So tell me about the first couple of months, especially specifically before the director of hospitality job became open.
Yeah.
How did you approach that, and what did you learn?
Yeah, so I very much just wanted to start in the tasting room, a few days a week. And first couple weeks was very much just shadowing everybody else who was here, asking everybody to do a tasting for me, taking notes, seeing their different approaches, because we are very adamant of we want it to be very much narrative-based, very much focused on the why we are doing things versus the how we are doing things. At the same time, everybody has their different nuances. And it's really wonderful finding the different aspects that people and the different avenues people take to discuss what we're doing and the wines that we make. And so really wanted to kind of see all the different approaches by everybody who was working here. I also got thrown into a little bit of harvest. 2 weeks in, they needed help on the line, so I manned the line that whole harvest, so those couple of weeks, which I had never done before, which was really interesting. I mean, I had never physically had my hands on those grapes like I did at that time. And so that was really wonderful just to be able to have that kind of tactile experience with them. Seeing the different variations. That's the first time I really had seen and tasted grapes that had botrytis. Holding and physically seeing the difference between a cluster of Pinot Noir that fits really nicely in the palm of your hand and Tempranillo and Dolcetto that are the size of your face. I mean, I have pictures of me and David holding it over our faces that first time. So being able to physically see how kind of the start of the experience was nothing I really had previously. And being able to go in and just ask Rachel questions, talk to the interns as they were working, talk to Will, our assistant winemaker, and just physically see what was going on. Because also I had never been up here before during that time. When we were first making wine in the basement, we had the wedding tent. But again, I was playing soccer during that time. I wasn't home much. And so, yeah, I'd pop my head down every once in a while, but most of the time no one was there anymore, and I had no idea what was going on. Whereas here, we have the winery, we have this beautiful big building now, and being able to actually see and walk through everything that's happening as it's happening, seeing the press in action, seeing pump overs and punch downs, and being able to let me do my first punch down, and being able to be involved a little bit more and just have that basic understanding. Because also, when you're talking about wine, it's so complicated. Sure, the basics of how you make wine are simple, but there's so much that goes into it. There's so much thought and care that goes into it. And so being able to see harvest progress month over month, that was an experience that was very eye-opening. Again, I still wish maybe one day I will have the opportunity to actually do a full harvest. Now with a full-time job, it might be a little more difficult. But that is kind of on my wish list, because I do think you have such a more in-depth understanding and awareness if you're able to physically do something. And so even though I didn't physically participate in the entirety, at least I was able to observe in a way that I never had before. And I very, very much appreciated that opportunity.
So then the director of hospitality role opens up, and you're still learning. And
yeah.
Suddenly it's there. So tell me about that and about the initial challenges of that role.
Yeah. So I think originally also the person who was in that role wore a multitude of hats, which is very typical in a small business as well. So I was aware that was probably going to happen. At the same time, there was a wine club focus, there was a tasting room focus, there was an event focus, and I knew wine club was probably not going to be my focus or my specialty, and there are wonderful, amazing people out there who all they want to do is wine club. And so we kind of had an internal discussion, and because also who was doing it before wasn't really kind of acting as a tasting room manager. So we had a little bit of a gap to fill in that, and that's kind of where I initially saw myself filling, was tasting room manager. And so I really wanted my focus to be on tasting room and on events and kind of those realms of hospitality, and then bring somebody else in to focus on wine club, because that's a full-time job in and of itself. And I knew my expertise and skills were probably better suited elsewhere. So when I first kind of came into that role, the first kind of challenges and opportunities were, again, to find a little bit of stability. So implement some new policies and procedures in there, just add a little bit of structure, because because I think without having a set tasting room manager for a while, it was there were times where it was like, well, I don't know, who's in charge? What are we doing? Who's making decisions? And so just kind of creating a little bit more of those expectations and responsibilities, and just implementing a little bit more policy and procedure. And that was something I did at the museum a lot as well. I do think that was really beneficial, and just kind of starting a baseline. We're all on the same page. These are our expectations. These are everybody's responsibilities. And then working up from there. I think that was really important. And, also being very open to and adamant that I wanted feedback from other people as well, because they were the ones who had been here for a really long time. So, is there something that isn't working? Do you guys have suggestions? I'm also here to learn and here to grow with you and here to grow as a business. So definitely wanting it to be quite collaborative as well. At the same time, also being open and excited by the challenge of I'm going to take this on though. I am going to be the person that if you're having a challenge, or if you need somebody to deal with a challenging situation or a difficult customer or something like that, I'm here. I'm here to help you. I am here to support you all. How can I do that? So definitely kind of wanted to also be very open and very welcoming. So those were kind of the initial steps that I took. And then once kind of getting settled, then it was looking forward into, okay, now how can we start to grow a little bit, or what opportunities are we missing out on? What are our goals? What are the experiences that we're hoping to create? And also looking into that, how does that really represent Bryn Mawr and represent who we are and where we want to go?
So let's talk about that. Obviously, we spoke with David before. He mentioned what an insane summer you've planned out this summer. Let's talk about how you get from there to there. So tell me about what you inherited in terms of events experiences, and what you saw as places to grow.
Yeah, so the event that I inherited that is our most popular event is Taco Tuesday. So Karen, our previous director of hospitality, created that event before COVID actually, and it was always very, very popular for us. So every Tuesday in the summertime, we welcome between 150, 175 people up here. We have a taco truck, we have live music, wine by the glass and bottle, and it's amazingly, wildly popular and successful. Free tickets, but we do ask for reservations because we have limited parking. But it's been such a wonderful event for us. We have so many locals who come every week. We have a wait list though a lot of the times. It's shocking how popular and successful it is. And it kind of blows our mind every summer that it just continues. Because I'm always like, is there nothing else to do on a Tuesday? I mean, I'm not complaining, I love it, but it always kind of takes us by surprise. So that we will hope to continue forever, because it's a wonderful event. We have streamlined it a little bit. We work with the same taco truck every single time. So it's Ricky's Tacos out of Newburgh. They're family owned. They're fantastic. We love them. So we will continue to work with them pretty much exclusively. And then in terms of the lineup of musicians also, I did take that over. We've brought back a couple of people that we've had in years past, but I've also really tried to diversify the lineup a little bit more, bring in more of a variety of artists, of genres, just mix it up a little bit so that every week it's totally different from the week before. That event has been wonderful. Apart from that, we have our wine club events, which we've also really kind of changed extensively, but that was kind of a running, ongoing event that we did twice a year. And then apart from that, we've kind of changed a little bit of everything. So we were doing a lot of events, but we've tried to become a little bit more strategic with how we're planning them, with kind of why we're planning something, why we're having an event, who's it for, what does it say about us, why do we believe in this? So coming up with events that, I think just really align with what we're trying to do here. And for me, that's having a range of events that, again, everybody or anybody could attend at any point. So a lot of them are free. We do have some ticketed events as well. But it's also, a lot of them are very much supporting community as well. And so the series that I started last year is Small Producer Sunday, and that's become really fun and popular for us. So every Sunday in the summertime, we host a pop-up winery, and it is a winemaker specializing in more limited production wines. So they might not have their own space at all. They might have a small space. They might have limited hours. It might be a 1 or 2 person duo. It might be someone with a really small team. But that's how we started. We started only making a few hundred cases a year, and we were in the basement. We didn't have a view. We didn't have a bathroom. We've worked towards all that, and we have an amazing, beautiful space now, but we did not start that way. And a lot of what we have accomplished is also because of the support of our community and our neighbors. Bethel Heights let us have a sandwich board every day when we were first starting out. They would send people up all the time. If we didn't have that kind of support, I don't think we would have reached where we are today. And so it's kind of our way of paying it back, but also paying it forward, because there are so many wonderful, amazing winemakers that are doing some really unique and innovative things. And it's really fun to be able to share that with our guests as well. And I think that's kind of also where I've seen the parallel in my art background as well, of kind of working with emerging artists and supporting them. This is kind of the series that I've created that allows us to do that with winemakers. So that's been really, really fun. And again, a lot of them are people that I have met through my tastings and through events and through my different experiences here in the Valley. Some people have just reached out. I've gotten recommendations from people here, from Rachel, from Will, asked other small producers, who do they think are doing some really cool things. So it's been a really, really fun, wonderful pop-up. That's also free to attend. So that one's been really fun. And then just kind of also based on our interests. My mom and I love yoga, so we started doing yoga here in the summer times, and that's been really wonderful. We work with Yoga and Beer, who do yoga and wine here. So we do that once a month, which is really lovely. We also get a really nice mix of people, some who've been out here before, some who haven't. Again, free to attend, suggested donation, but we always encourage them to stay after for a glass and bottle. And it's always great to see the people who have never been up here before. This is your view when we're doing yoga on a Saturday morning. In my mind, it couldn't be any better than that. And then let's stay after and have some wine. So that's been really fun to do. And then we've also, we started a food program, which is also very much based on our family interests. So my mom, David, and I, we are huge foodies. My dad appreciates food, but he'd also be happy eating pizza every night. But he's here along for the ride, and we love him for it. But my mom, David, and I definitely have an interest in culinary creativity and what people can do. And so we, for a long time, had always been interested in having a food program here, but also with the understanding that we probably couldn't have a chef full time. We do have a commercial kitchen here in the new tasting room, which is fantastic. For a summer, we had a chef who kind of just did like paninis and that kind of vibe, which was really fun and successful, but also knowing that that probably wouldn't be sustainable throughout the year. And so we were kind of thinking about different opportunities, looking to do maybe a small plate menu during the week that was really low key, but still working with someone local to create that menu for us, and then thinking of doing potentially once a month dinners with local chefs as well. Yes. So we had talked about doing these kind of once a month dinners with local chefs, because we know a few local chefs. We really love what they're doing, and we've never really done any sort of food and wine pairings up here before. So we thought it could be a really fun opportunity to do that. So the first person that we approached was Chef Jonathan Jones from Epilogue Kitchen and Cocktails down in Salem. We had been a huge supporter of his restaurant ever since they opened. Absolutely loved his food, loved his approach to food. He was so thoughtful and at the same time so creative and inventive. I think where he really shines is using really simple ingredients and elevating them into a way that you never expect and pair them in a way that you never expect. And so we had expressed some interest in doing, again, a single dinner with him in the summertime last year. And he came back and said, well, yeah, but let's do it every week. And then let's do the small plate menu too. And we were completely taken aback. We did not think this was possible. We did not think he'd be interested in that. And after a few weeks, we had a culinary director. And so it went from an idea of one single dinner to bringing on our favorite local chef to become our culinary director and create a full-blown food program for us. And this actually all happened while we were on a family vacation in France last year as well. So we were in wine country celebrating my mom's retirement, talking about kind of the future of Bryn Mawr. And he sends us this email during that time as well saying, I want to do everything and I'm on board. And it was the right place, the right time, but also like the most amazing culmination of his interest in us, our interest in him, and our interest in food, and also our interest in creating more experiences for our visitors here. And so the idea behind the small plate menu is very focused on seasonality. At the same time, very easy for us to prepare. So he prepares everything at his restaurant. He then brings it up and we kind of put it all together. So it's our amazing tasting room staff that actually prepares these most of the time. We do have some help on weekends as well, but that was something we kind of threw at them and they fortunately said yes. And they've taken that on as well, which is amazing. And because, they're also still doing everything they normally do in the tasting room. They're still doing tastings. They're still checking people in and out. They are sharing everything about Bryn Mawr. And then we threw a food program on them. So it was a little bit of a learning curve, but they've been absolutely amazing. And it's been so wonderful to have because it just provides a little bit of a new light and a new experience here. I think unfortunately, there are a lot of challenges when it comes to food programs. A lot of places do not have ability to have a chef on site or even have a kitchen on site. And so we're very grateful and we're very blessed to be able to have that opportunity. But we're really excited because again, he a lot of times will use something very simple and he will bring it into a new light. And we change the menu every month as well. So it's pretty much always new. The only thing we keep is his espresso chocolate cake because it is iconic and it always goes well with our Tempranillo, which we will always have on our menu. I think people will revolt if we don't. But it's just really fun to see what he comes up with every time. And then we started doing our Peak Harvest dinners. So Peak Harvest is a 6-course wine and food pairing that we do once a month. When we first started last summer, we were doing it every week. And this year we kind of have just done it to once a month. Just because we found that while it's a wonderful event, realistically, the demand I don't think was as high as we were hoping it would be. And it's been really wonderful. So again, very focused on seasonality. He sources everything hyper locally, so everything is sourced within a day's drive of here. It could be a very long day, but a day's drive, as he will always say. But what's really fun is a lot of dinners, it might have the food first, or you might start with the food and then you find or decide the wine pairings with it. Whereas he's very adamant, he wants us to give him the flight first. And he wants it to be a different flight every single month. And he wants to create something completely new every single month as well. So the small plate menu is different every month. Peak Harvest is different every month. So his mind is just continuously thinking, creating. It blows my mind. I want to get inside of his head, but I also don't because I think it's pure chaos in there. But it's so wonderful to see how inventive he can be. And that has become one of my favorite events to put on because I think it showcases just a little bit of everything that we believe in. We are here to showcase our beautiful site. So a lot of the wines we choose are very state focused. We really want to talk up Bryn Mawr and what we're doing here. We like to use some of our library wines as well, so it's a really fun opportunity to showcase some of the early wines that Rachel has made, and it's an opportunity to support a wonderful, amazing, creative local chef and share his gift with everybody else. So it's a really fun, collaborative dinner. He speaks about every dish, I speak about every wine, and it's just really fun, it's engaging, and that's been just a really, really wonderful event to be able to create. And the name from it, it kind of derived from the idea of harvest. Not only does it have the connotation with wine of when you're harvesting grapes, but in terms of produce, when you're harvesting different ingredients as well. And the idea that we are harvesting and using all these at their peak. So that is kind of the inspiration behind the name. But that's been really lovely as well. So kind of created a little bit more of a focused event program on avenues and interests of our family specifically. And so that's been really fun to be able to come up with things that we all want to attend just as much as anybody else.
So you've drawn a number of parallels between sort of your work in art and work in wine. Tell me about, now you're a few years in here with working with customers. Tell me about similarities, differences between presenting art, presenting wine, who you're presenting it to, how they're taking it, what are the challenges, how similar is it?
Absolutely. I think there is so much overlap which is really great because I don't think a lot of people think there is a lot of overlap between art and wine necessarily at the onset. But the amount of times where I have kind of talked to people about my personal experience and my relationship with art and wine, the amount of times that people say, oh, you're right, they are kind of like the same. It happens a lot, and it's great because there is such a connection with creativity and with understanding and with approaching these creative avenues, because Rachel is an artist, 100%. She is creating art back there. And our ability to showcase that in a way where people can, again, hopefully appreciate it. We're not going to tell you what to think. Even we have on our tasting flight, we come up with tasting notes. So usually there are a couple that are aromatic. There might be one or two that are based on the palate. And then the last word that we put in there is an adjective. And it's very much based on the experience of the wine. And it throws people off a lot of times because sometimes they're like, well, how do I smell seamless? And I'm like, you don't. Or maybe you do. I don't know. Again, it's all subjective. But again, it's very much, this is maybe what I smell. This is maybe what Rachel smells. This is maybe what David smells. That doesn't mean that you have to smell that. Mm-hmm. This, again, is a guide. If you get these things, great. But if you don't, what do you get? And a lot of times we will ask those kinds of questions of, what did you get from this? What did you smell? Did you get anything that was on there? Did you get something different? What did you think between these different Pinot Noirs? Which one did you prefer? Why? So asking those questions too, where it involves them, as opposed to, again, us also just talking at them, we very much want it to be an organic conversation. And I think, asking them when they first get here too, have you been here before? What's your experience with wine? We get a lot of people who might have never gone tasting before, and I love that. I think it's amazing. If we can be the first experience they have, and again, we can kind of help guide them and show them that this doesn't have to be scary. This can be really fun. This can be playful. This can be entertaining. You can appreciate it. And again, maybe you don't like everything. That's okay. That's the whole point of a tasting. I think the amount of people too who are like, oh, I don't want to try the Chardonnay, or I don't want to try the Riesling. I don't like sweet Riesling. Well, it's not a sweet Riesling, but you're going to try it because it's 1 ounce. If you don't like it, you don't have to finish it. But that's the whole point, is like trying something different. Mm-hmm. And the amount of people, when we say to do that, I'd say 95% of people are like, oh, that's not what I expected. That was really nice. And so for us, I think it's very much, how can we open people's eyes? How can we make this something that they want to know more about? I think piquing people's curiosity is something that we're really interested in, and one of those overlaps between art and wine. So for me, it's I want to know more. I also maybe don't know the questions to ask. But again, that's how we can then start to ask those questions of them. And it can be very simple. Again, very experiential based. We might not talk about a single thing like uberly technical, and that's totally fine. It's very much just how can I engage with you so that you might learn a little more than when you came.
You brought up family dynamic earlier. We're going to talk about that a little bit. I'm curious about, obviously you mentioned you have personal relationships with all these people now. You have business relationships with them as well. Tell me about getting into that, getting familiar with that, and adjustments you've had to make working in the family business. So when I got here, obviously David had been here for a long time. He had been here for 7 years at that point. My dad had been here forever. Rachel had been here since the beginning. Mm-hmm. And a lot of our tasting room staff had been here for many years as well. So they had seen the dynamic grow and shift as well. David and I also came at this from very different backgrounds, in that this is kind of where he started. So after school, he started here at the winery, and he's progressed ever since. Whereas I went and had a completely different career and experience in a completely different area. And so I think coming in, it was very much kind of trying to explain and show my different experiences and background and the skills that I had developed, even though it was in the arts versus in wine, having them understand that, and then having them appreciate that. And so there were a lot of conversations about that, because also understandably, David had worked in the tasting room for a really long time. David also has strong opinions. My parents also have strong opinions. And so figuring out how we all fit together and what our dynamic was, it took a lot of conversations. And I will say too, we were the worst at talking about work at dinner. It was
It happened every single time. It might get heated every once in a while too. And it got to the point where family dinner felt like a working meeting or a working dinner. And so one thing that I did suggest earlier on was, let's have a family meeting where we schedule it during the workday, and we can all go through one by one and talk about, what we're working on, everything like that. If we need to have larger discussions, things like that. And that's been really good, because that has allowed us a little bit to separate that, because it's also hard when you live on the property. So when I first moved here, I was living with my parents in their house. So, 30-second commute to work right down there. So, that separation is really hard. And so it can kind of be all consuming. You're working here, you're living here, you're here with the family. And so that, it was absolutely a challenge, because also going from a place that, yes, I absolutely cared about working in the arts and I cared about working at the museum, but I was able to turn it off a little bit when I got home. Whereas here, you really can't, because it's also much more important to me. This is my livelihood, this is our legacy. So there is no on and off switch. And that can also make it really challenging, because when you're frustrated about things at work now, it's not, this boss who's just someone random. It's, Dad, why aren't you doing this thing? But I can't necessarily say in front of everybody, Dad, why aren't you doing this thing? Even though I do every once in a while. But that was also kind of a challenge, was, turning off daughter mode and turning on work professional family member mode. And that did take a while. I'll be the first to admit. I think with me and David as well, because yes, I'm his older sister, but he absolutely had the upper hand when it came to his experience here in the wine industry. And so getting him to, again, kind of understand and appreciate the experiences and the skills that I was bringing to this role, even though it was very, very different than being here in the wine industry, that absolutely took some time. And just our communication styles as well, because we also have that, brother-sister dynamic, which is really fun a lot of the time, but early on it was very challenging. And getting to the point where, where we now are on such a similar page, we have that understanding. So I think, being able to work through that and know that we're working towards a greater goal was really helpful. But yeah, there are still definitely times where the daughter comes out, and, I might get a little sassy, and I'll be the first to admit it. So yeah, that has been challenging. At the same time, I love my dad more than anybody, and he knows that. And, I know even if it's a challenging day here, if we go down to the house, we'll turn on football, we'll have a glass of wine, and we'll have a great rest of the night. So I think that is really nice, again, knowing that even if we get frustrated with each other or we drive each other crazy, we're still here for each other at the end of the day, and we love each other. And again, we're all working towards something really amazing.
Well, on that note, let's talk about the future a little bit. Tell me about, as you look ahead for yourself and for Bryn Mawr, what is on the sort of the horizon for you personally, and what has not been done here that you want to do?
Yeah, I think, I've definitely found my home in hospitality. It's the area that I feel really passionately and strongly about. I love creating different experiences for different visitors. So that is definitely something that I want to build upon and continue to create here. With the event program, but also with our experiences in the tasting room, with our food program. So I think being able to offer such a multitude of experiences and opportunities for people, that to me is the most important part. Because also being here in the Willamette Amity Hills, I absolutely love our region. I love the wines that come from our region. At the same time, we're pretty far south in terms of the Willamette Valley. There are a lot of people who aren't going to make it all the way down here. There's 700 wineries plus between here and Portland. So it's going to take something really special to get people down here. At the same time, Salem is an amazing crowd. It's a little bit of a different crowd, but we love them. They're loyal. They're amazing. We can count on them. But they're definitely looking for something a little different, something a little bit more low-key than maybe the Dundee crowd. And we understand that. And I think that's also why we look for such a range. I want there to be a lot of opportunities where people can just come in here and hang out. So yes, we have tastings, but you can come in and just have a glass. You can come here and just have a bottle. So having just options, I think, is the biggest thing, because we have learned that people just want variation. They want different experiences. Same with our flights that we offer. We have a classic flight, which is more Pinot Noir and Chardonnay focused. We have a seasonal flight, which is much more eclectic. Right now, most people are choosing the seasonal flight. At the same time, we have those people that come here specifically for Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. So the fact that we're able to cater to so many different people is what I prioritize, and I think it's what people are wanting. At the same time, it'd be great to get new people in here. That's always the challenge, right? Is getting people in the door. We have an amazing view. We are very, very lucky up here. So I like to think that we lure people here with the view and we keep them with the wine. And I think it's true. But also, looking at a picture of the view, it's beautiful, but it's nothing like actually being here. Mm-hmm. So I think finding new avenues and opportunities to get new people here is something we're really interested in doing. There are a lot of people that have maybe heard of us that maybe still haven't heard of us, and that's okay. But how can we get them to know about us? How can we get them to come here? And how can we give them the full, beautiful experience and the experience that they are specifically looking for? Mm-hmm. I want someone, again, if it's their first time, please come, hang out. If you're a very seasoned wine aficionado, please come and we'll get geeky and we'll talk about texts and we'll talk about what's going on in the vineyard. We'll talk about what's going on in the winery and the different vessels that we're using and all the really interesting techniques that Rachel's using. I think just new people and curious people. That's what I really want to latch onto moving forward.
And what's sort of the long-term vision for Bryn Mawr as the place? Is there more growth to do? Are there plans in place for more?
I think we have grown a lot in the last few years. And at this point, I think we have a better understanding of kind of where we want to be in terms of case production, in terms of how much wine we're actually making and who we're making it for. I think being a little bit more strategic is in our future in terms of, again, like which kinds of wines we're making. Are these specifically for Wine Club? Are these for everybody? How much are we making of each? Those were decisions that were just kind of made without data because we didn't necessarily have the data early on. And that's normal, that happens all the time. But because we now have the ability to kind of look at those things, we now know what a lot of our members and what a lot of our visitors are looking for. I think we have that better understanding of where we see ourselves fitting in the wine industry and in the Willamette Valley. And so how can we fine tune that? How can we maintain that? I think that's kind of where I see us focusing as opposed to necessarily continuing to necessarily physically expand. Mm-hmm. Again, we'd love to expand our membership. We'd love more visitors, things of that sort. Rachel is working on 2 new wines and kind of a new tier of wine. So we're very excited for that. But I think we're really honing in on what works for us. Mm-hmm. And those wines will be released next year. And I think once that happens, we will have a really, really great understanding and a great lineup of wines to offer everybody, again, based on a multitude of different price points, varietals, and to me, that's what's really important. At the same time, all of those are still showcasing what a badass, amazing winemaker Rachel is and how truly magical her wines are. Mm-hmm. And I think if we can have more people understand that and learn that, that's what we're looking for.
So about Oregon wine a little bit, and then you've talked about kind of your introduction to it. Tell me about, from your perspective, what Oregon wine looks like right now, where it's going.
Yeah, I think it's a really unique and exciting time here in Oregon. Again, I mentioned early on, my knowledge was pretty much restricted to Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. And growing up in California, obviously I was exposed to a lot of different types of Chardonnay than we might see here in Oregon. And it was actually really hard for me to necessarily gravitate towards Chardonnay up here because I do not gravitate towards the California style of Chardonnay. Mm-hmm. At the same time, Rachel has completely opened my eyes to an Oregon and specifically Eola Amity Hill style of Chardonnay. Mm-hmm. So that beautiful brightness, that acidity, letting the fruit shine. Again, is it the white wine I'm gonna pick off the shelf every single time? No, but can I, like art, appreciate it much more Absolutely. So that's been really fun to kind of expand my horizon in that varietal specifically. But then again, also seeing what else you can grow here in Oregon. And, for us, I had never tried personally a Dolcetto until we planted it. I didn't even know what Dolcetto was. Same with Tempranillo. I had not had a Tempranillo. We fortunately did a trip to Spain as a family, so I have now had a lot more experience with Tempranillo. But before that, my guess was as good as anybody. And so being able to try new varietals, and specifically here on our site and see the potential, that's been really wonderful. And then more expansively to see what others are growing in the Willamette Valley, that is what I specifically am looking for. So when I go wine tasting personally, absolutely I'd love to try a Chardonnay and a Pinot Noir, but I'm also looking for what else are you doing? Because there is so much potential here. There are so many kind of microclimates. I mean, even just here next to Van Duzer, I'm looking down there at Johan. They have so many different unique varietals that I had never tried also before moving here, which has been really fun. And so seeking out what others are doing and how others are doing things in new, unique ways, that's what I'm really interested in.
Last question for you. Tell me about what's been the most rewarding part of coming back into the wine industry and coming back into the family business?
Being part of something bigger and growing something that is personal. This isn't just for me, this isn't just for David, it's not just for my parents, it's for our family as a whole. My grandma came up here last weekend, along with some of my extended family for her 90th birthday, and we also buried my grandfather at the same time. And knowing that this isn't just for us, that this is so much more, not only for our family, but for others around us, that is like the most beautiful gift I could ever ask for. And it's so rewarding and wonderful to be part of that on a greater scale. And who knows where Bryn Mawr will go in the future. My niece, she's 9. She said she's ready to take it over. We'll see. Would love that for her. But, at this point, I'm just really excited to be part of it. I'm excited to continue to invest in Oregon, in the Willamette Valley, in Bryn Mawr. I'm excited to do it with David. I'm excited to do it with my parents. I think, even the time where they decide to retire, they live 30 seconds away. They're never not going to be involved. We joke that I want to get my dad a rocking chair and put it in the tasting room. And he'll just be there every day hanging out, saying hi to people. He can restock the shelves. That's his favorite thing to do, which is like the most endearing quality about him. But I never not want the family to be here. And I think that's something that's really unique as well. So many of the wineries around here are family owned and were started by families. It's becoming less and less common that second generation, third plus, fourth plus are involved. And I know my parents were always hoping we would be involved, but I realistically don't know if they actually thought it would happen. And so I think the fact that it is happening and that David and I are really both excited to be here is awesome. And we're just really excited to build on this legacy and continue to see the opportunities and see what we can achieve here at Bryn Mawr.
All right. All the questions that I have, anything I didn't ask that I should have, or anything we didn't cover today that you wanted to cover?
I don't think so. Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time.
Absolutely.
For sharing your story with us, for allowing us some more time at this beautiful place.
Absolutely.
Go ahead and let you off the hook.
Thank you.
Thank you. So much.